Hi, this is Peter Godinez, and again, I have my hero coach Steve Miller on the line with me. And the subject everybody's screaming about is they want to know, how do you make money with your brain, with your mind in the year 2022? And Coach Miller has a journey that he'd like to share with people who are interested. And I think this is a real interesting subject. So, with that, Coach Miller.
Yeah, I look. It's a never-ending question. People ask that question a lot, and of course, you ask it even more when you're just graduating from school and you have a degree in in business, whatever the degree is in. You've made a decision that that's the degree you want, and now how do I translate that degree into a business or into getting a job that makes some sense? Now, I want to put this in some kind of context. It's of course difficult and more, I guess, more immediate when the country is going through a tough time, either as it relates to, um, you know, uh, prices being raised. You're going through all kinds of governmental issues, tax issues. Prices are being raised as far as rent, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, if you have a family, the number of people you have in your family accelerates the angst that one has about making enough money to live a comfortable life. And each person has to decide what comfort means to them. So there's a big difference, obviously, between living a life that allows you to pay your bills and living a life that gives you not only your bill paying opportunities, but travel and entertainment, et cetera. And I think we all look for something. We all look for something that makes us comfortable and hopefully the people around us comfortable. So first of all, the definition of comfort is a relative term, but let's forget about that for a second and let's talk about the reality of finding a job and the reality of what your expertise and background is. And I think I can honestly tell you that I went through a period of time where I I think I misrepresented in my own mind my expertise or additional talent that I may have had. So let me put it in perspective. I went to Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois. I majored in English, which what was I going to do with an English degree? Maybe stand in a corner and read books, or was I going to do something else? Wasn't sure how that translated, but I got into a major that felt comfortable for me. So graduated and then went on after a period of time when I was out in California, got a master's degree in biomechanical analysis and a master's degree in physical education. And later went on and got a master's degree in contemporary English literature, still not 100% sure of what I was going to do. So then I become, at a particular period of time, I become the director of, or I actually became the track coach at Kansas State University. I know I'm skipping over some of my background, but I become the track coach at Kansas State University. And during the time I was the track coach, the director of athletics was fired. And I was in California with Suzanne, with my wife, and we were talking about the fact that this good friend of ours was fired from the job. And I was worried about who they were going to get as director of athletics, because as the track coach, you're not high on the let's keep that person list, or you're not high on big pay. Track and field is, unfortunately and unnecessarily, a sport that doesn't garner a lot of revenue and it doesn't garner a lot of enthusiasm from people, which I think is wrong. But be that as it may, how, who are they going to hire? How are they going to hire that person? And Suzanne said to me one evening, why don't you become the AD? And I said, don't be ridiculous. How could I become the AD? Because my career had been in track and field. My career had been with degrees. The best I could hope to do was maybe teach. And I didn't think being a director of athletics was in my wheelhouse or within my capabilities. But what I learned over a period of time was how transferable skill sets are. And I think that this is the place that I think people need to concentrate. No matter what your job is, or no matter what your expertise is, or no matter what your background is, unless it's in a very, very, very technical area, and even then, what ends up occurring is all jobs, which I have said this before, I do not think business and or jobs are difficult. I happen to think the most difficult part of a job and the most difficult part of the workforce is how you deal with people. So if you have, and if you want to develop a skill and a skill set, that skill set would be how you deal and handle people that you work with, or people you work for, or people who work for you. And I believe that if we took a deep dive into our own backgrounds, into our own histories, we would find transferable skills, transferable, abilities that transfer into almost anything. So I went from being a track coach to an administrator. Now, did I ever think I was going to be an administrator? No, I didn't. But the opportunity arose, and ultimately I felt like, wait a minute, I think my skill set, dealing with people, motivating, getting people to see things that they may not have seen otherwise, believing in themselves, etc., was a skill which was transferable into becoming an administrator in sport, because after all, you are still dealing with people. Now, you have to deal with contracts, you have to deal with negotiation, you have to deal with leadership, you have to deal with a lot of things. But as a track coach, low end of the sports sector, you do all those things. You lead young people. You negotiate with them about workouts, about how you're going to buy uniforms, et cetera, et cetera. So those skills that I learned as a track coach were very easily transferable to becoming an AD. So when you say, how do I use my mind, or what do I do in order to make money? I think that one of the very first things you do is assess your talents, assess your skill set, assess your abilities, and say, wait a minute, I have abilities that are easily transferable to what the job opening is, or easily transferable to what people are talking about. You have to go out of the box, out of your comfort zone, in order to enter a place where you can engage and use your skills. And the unfortunate thing about most of us is we are programmed to do the very things we've been practicing, not realizing that the practice we've had in previous jobs, or the practice that we've had in comfort zones, are again transferable. And it's important to take a look at jobs that are available and say, wait a minute, I have some skills that are applicable to that job. And put yourself in a place that may be initially uncomfortable, may be a little worrisome, and say, well, wait a minute, do I really have that skill? So there's a certain, I don't want to say faith or belief, but there's a certain degree of confidence that one has to acquire to say, my background, my history, my education, my interaction with people absolutely puts me in a situation where I have a skill set for this job. Whereas before, you were so rooted in this silo of activity that you simply did not believe that your skills were transferable, because you spent your education, you spent maybe time in your first job doing the things that you thought you were prepared for. But little did you know that during that preparation of your initial education, of your initial job, may have had certain degrees of expertise that you could use in another environment. So it is a little bit of a discomfort. It is a little bit of a challenge, but look outside of your environment as opposed to inside. Because what we do all too often is say, yes, this job is perfect for me, but it's perfect for you in the environment and in the world that you created, and you're not looking beyond that world. And what we need to do is look beyond that world, look beyond that box. Don't listen to yourself or others that limit your ability to do other things. And I think once you get to that place, the world kind of opens up for you because now you have options. One of the reasons that education is so important is not because sheer education alone is important. It's the experiences while you're going through education that is important. It's your interactions with people that's important. It's things that you learn from other people in other jobs and in other professions. You learn skills and you can apply those skills. So, number one is don't define your perimeter. Don't define yourself based on what you've learned and what you think your skills are. Number two is go outside of that box and look around. There are all kinds of opportunities that you never thought were available to you that could, in fact, be available and also would embrace your skill set. And number three is it requires a little bit of discomfort. You have to be able to see where this transition can take place and go for it based on what you've done and learned, even if you don't feel that your skill set measures up. So for me, I went from a coach and a high school teacher to running one of the biggest sports marketing businesses in the world, to becoming president or CEO of multiple major companies. And each of those skills 10 years previous or 15 years previous, I just thought that I was going to be a coach the rest of my life. I mean, and by the way, I was pretty comfortable feeling that way. I mean, it wasn't like it was a discomfort, but I didn't realize the width and depth and breadth of what's available out there and how I may be able to use my skills in order to be effective in those other jobs. So I became a consultant to a race car team. I became a consultant to other kinds of businesses where I didn't think I belonged. But I ultimately learned that I had some abilities that transcended where I started. And as a result, it allowed me to make other choices. And those other choices turned into a very comfortable living, a very, very exciting life, travel. I've met people, kings and queens of countries. I've met people that were the top coaches in the world, top athletes in the world. And as I said earlier, traveled around the world, probably have been to half of the countries in the world. And just for some type of context, there's probably 200 or a little bit less recognized countries in the world. And I'll bet that I've been to 75 to 100 of those countries. I mean, places like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Albania, places that people just don't normally go to, besides the Frances and the English countryside and so forth and so on. It has been a life lesson for me, and it has made me a citizen of the world versus a citizen of California or a citizen of Kansas or a citizen of the United States. It's broadened my horizons, and every time those horizons get broadened, I see more transferable skills. And I think each of us have to dig deep and be completely honest with ourselves in knowing what we can do, in knowing what we've prepared for, and looking beyond the silo that we created for ourselves, to look beyond that to see where we might line up. And for me, that's the way you get to a place where you can both make money, have new satisfaction, new opportunities, and really start another phase of your life. And anybody who knows me as a high school coach at Bloom High School in Chicago Heights, Illinois, knows that now, 50 years later, I'm 78 years old, and I'm still finding things out about myself, becoming the CEO of the Agassi Graph, holding company. I mean, These are things that I thought were out of my reach. And I learned that my abilities far exceeded my vision. And I bought into that. And that's the way I feel one must take advantage of in order to elevate their abilities, elevate their skills, and elevate their view of themselves as to what they can accomplish.